Hello everybody and welcome back to the Blossom Review. Today we'll be talking about a show that I recently fell in love with. We'll be reviewing Coupang TV's What Comes After Love. What Comes After Love is the story of Choi Hong, played by the marvelous Lee Se-young. When Hong was young, she decided to move from Korea to Japan and prepare to apply for a Japanese university. In Japan, she meets Aoki Jungo, played by the fantastic Sakaguchi Kentaro. Jungo is a university student and an aspiring novelist, and they fall in love and they start a relationship. But that relationship doesn't last long. They break up. Hong goes back to Korea and they follow their lives. But you can see that they are forever changed by their time together. 5 years later, they meet again in Korea this time. So What Comes After Love is a very, very, very special show that I think everybody should watch because it's very authentic and it's very realistic and it discusses the complexity of love. So quick warning, spoiler alert. Guys, I will be spoiling you. So if you haven't watched the show and you don't like spoilers, stop here, go watch the show and then come back. If you have watched the show, just follow me. So What Comes After Love is a classic romance drama in which the main dramatic issue revolves around the love story between Jungo and Hong. So the script, since we're talking about a show that only has 6 episodes, they decided to focus on this one storyline. So you don't have overexposure of supporting characters, you don't have random extra plot lines being thrown into the mix. No, you have this one narrative that they're telling, and they tell this narrative very well. So the script is perfectly paced, a solid script. So What Comes After Love is actually this stunning mix of a very good script, stunning visuals, and incredible performances. And since they decided to tell this one story, they decided to focus on this main storyline. I think it allows us not only to fully engage in their love story, but it also allows the show to discuss and convey its main theme effectively. So they had a point that they wanted to make, and they made this point very, very clearly. What is that point? The point of What Comes After Love is that love, only love, is never enough. And communication is key. So when you see Hong and Jungo in their youth, you see that they love each other deeply, passionately. And it's a real love, it's a sincere love. It's not a joke. They truly love each other. And it's beautiful to watch them together. Not just because of the characters, not just because of the script, but because Lee and Sakaguchi, they exude chemistry. And their performances are peppered with micro expressions and glances that say so much more than any line of dialogue would ever be able to convey. So it is stunning to see them together. So when they were young, you see that love that is pure and passionate and sincere and warm, right? But as the show unravels, as the story unravels, you realize that their breakup is inevitable. Because with Hong and Jungo's love story, you realize that only love can't do very much. So I think what comes after love, it sort of breaks down 2 ideas that you see very often in romance stories. So in romance stories, you often see that just because 2 people are in love, they are automatically in sync. They don't need to talk to each other, they just understand each other. That's fine, they don't need to communicate. That's number one. Number two is this idea that once you are in a romantic relationship, you're not an individual anymore, you're just part of this unit. And what comes after love destroys these two ideas very, very well through the love story between Jungo and Hong. So even though they love each other very, very much, and they live together, they move in together, Jungo and Hong, they are still individuals and they still have their own problems. They still have their own obstacles to face. So you see Hong struggling to integrate into Japanese society. You see her struggling with her family, with her future. You see Jungo struggling with university, with work, with his career, because he felt the need that, he needed to work. And he needed to work very hard because he wanted to enter the publishing industry, and it's very difficult to enter the publishing industry. So they are both facing problems individually, but they fail to tell each other about these problems because maybe in their innocence and their immaturity, they thought that just being in love and being next to each other would be enough to allow the other to understand them. So they never talk to each other about these problems, which means that their love alone becomes weaker and weaker and weaker in the face of all these struggles, because love is never only that emotion that you feel, that beautiful, fantastic, passionate emotion that you feel. Love is the willingness to communicate, is the willingness to compromise, is active support, it is patience. What happens with Hong and Jungo is that they never open up to the other. They never say, look, I'm going through this and this and this, and I need your help, I need your support, I need your understanding. Because they believed that only love was enough to establish this line of communication. And no, love is an active effort that you need to put in. They fail to understand in the past that only words that are voiced can be understood by the other person. You can never expect the other person to just understand you if you don't make yourself understood very clearly using words. The relationship that shone so bright in its early days starts to lose its color, it starts to lose its spark, because neither Jungo nor Hong made an effort to allow the other person to understand them, to understand who they are and the struggles that they were facing. And I think, and they never, it's interesting because you see that they never voice their needs in the relationship either. So Hong needed somebody to be there with her, to spend more time with her, to encourage her to open up. Jungo needed somebody to understand his struggle with his career and work. So at the end of the day, they were both right and they were both wrong. But they were too young and too immature to understand that they were both making a mistake here. And then when things explode and they break up, which was 100% inevitable, after that, Jungo realizes that maybe love, well, how come our relationship didn't work if we both loved each other? So Jungo starts working very hard to understand what love really is and to understand where they went wrong. Meanwhile, Hong, she decides to close the door. And it takes her a long time to actually actively think about her relationship because she was so hurt and she was so lonely that she just decided to ignore everything that happened and move on with her life. But both of them, with time, they understand their mistakes and they understand the complexity of that emotion. I think their love is this sort of magical love, timeless love, that so much so that it stays with them even after they break up. And so with time, they understand their mistakes And that leads to the end, of course, of the show, in which they talk to each other. They openly and honestly talk to each other. I think final note on this topic is something that the show does very well is that they introduce the reason why Hong and Jungo behaved the way they did, why they struggle with communication like this. But they never exploit it for the sake of melodrama. So it allows you as the audience to understand where they are coming from, but at the same time, it gives the space for the characters to grow out of their flaws and their weaknesses on their own. So it's not about, oh my God, this is therapy session. It's what I said before about not adding too many plot lines into the show. So it shows us, to helps us as the audience to understand who they are as characters, but the show focuses more on present growth, which is very, very nice to see. So let's talk about the visuals. This show, What Comes After Love, was directed by Moon Hyun-sung, who is actually a film director. This is actually his first K-drama. And he creates this fully cinematic experience in What Comes After Love. So he allows the story to shine in these very romantic compositions, and he excels when it comes to color and the light. So the show intertwines past and present, so he as the director, he needed to separate these two very clearly, and he does that so well. So if you get the past, so the flashbacks, when Hong and Jungo first met and when they start going out together and they fall in love, everything is portrayed in very vivid colors and this sort of diffused light that gives the show this hazy, sort of dreamlike quality. So their past sparks with that warmth and that magic of early love. But as the relationship starts to break down, the colors start to get darker and darker and darker, and the lighting becomes harder and harder, clearly showing that, things were slowly falling apart. But then in the present day, you see that the lighting is very even, so it gives this sort of realistic style to it, and the colors are all muted, a bit desaturated, contrasting very well with the past. So the past is something warm and beautiful and fantastic, while the present is something cold and dull. And it's just, he not only managed to successfully differentiate the two periods, the past and present, but he also managed to convey how important Hong was to Jungo and Jungo was to Hong. Because their lives together, they were full of color and warmth, while the present, when they are apart, it is sad and cold and gloomy. And this story with the light and the color, it also connects with the theme, or not the theme, but the motif of seasons. So seasons are used throughout the show to also represent their lives. So you have when they were together, when they were young, that's the spring of their lives, while the present is this gloomy, cold winter. Which also, and this is a very clear symbol in the entire story, so much so that they use a very nice saying at the end of the show that goes, "Spring blossoms are the response to the snowflakes of winter." But seasons are only one symbol in this story. You have keychains, you have books, you have running. The script for What Comes After Love is very symbolic, very poetic, and very, very subtle too. So you have from the keychains that needed to stay together, to the books that represented the characters, but that the other person only reads after they put their stubbornness aside and they open up to this idea that we needed to actually communicate. Hong and Jungo's story is told way beyond confessions or arguments. Their story is told in these little details that show how deep their emotions actually are. But I think running deserves a special mention here. So Hong has this habit of running. She runs every morning, okay? And when they were young, Jungo relied on her habit of running to meet her. So in a way, running brought them together in the first place, in very general terms. But then Hong continues to run on her own, because when they tried to run together, Jungo and Hong, when they were young, Jungo couldn't keep up with her. It was too much for him. And then she continues running and she runs on her own. She keeps running throughout the entire show. She runs literally, but she also runs. But running, I think, is also used in a figurative way to show that she's running from her loneliness, she's running from her fear, she's running from her struggles, she's running from relationships that are not giving her what she truly needs and what she truly wants. And then at the end of the show, Jungo runs to her. And then he not only runs to her, but he runs alongside her. And that leads to the most honest and open-hearted conversation in the entire show. They can finally keep up with each other. They can finally run at the same speed. And they can finally communicate. They can finally be fully honest and communicate with each other. At the end of the show, you also understand that Jungo actually used the running as a way to understand her. And then at the end of the show, when you see them finally running together, you realize that they are finally on the same page, that they are finally able to see who the other person truly is, and they are finally able to communicate properly. And it is just beautiful and magical. And if you watched the show but you didn't realize this, I would urge you to rewatch it, because running was such a smart symbol in the show, and it was such a very, 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 very smart way to tell this story without being super obvious and dramatic. And you have several different scenes with running that mean a lot in the story, so I would encourage you to rewatch it if you didn't notice that before. Another thing that pops up in the story are cultural differences, but they never add extra drama to the narrative. Actually, they pop up here and there as warnings to Jungo and Hong. And they end up being missed opportunities, because these cultural differences, they pop up in the story as opportunities that they have to finally talk, to finally open up, to tell the other what annoys them, what they are struggling with, but they decide to ignore it. So I think that cultural differences, they are a tool in the story, but they are not used for dramatic purposes, let's say. Finally, let's talk about performances. Lee and Sakaguchi, they deliver impressive performances. They're just impressive. They go from this chemistry charged, happy, always smiling couple, incredibly hopeful, incredibly innocent couple, to melancholic, gloomy, but considerably more mature adults. Their performances they just carry this intense feeling of longing and regret and hurt and ultimately love that floods every single scene. It is just incredible. They deliver their dialogue very well, but like I said before, it's the moments of silence between them that convey everything. So their performances are just as subtle and just as persuasive as the script itself. I think I need to highlight here Lee's performance in the breakup scene. In that scene, she goes from Japanese to Korean because, of course, as she gets angrier and angrier, she resorts to her mother tongue, I would say. So she lets go of Japanese. She starts in Japanese, shouting in Japanese, and then suddenly she switches into Korean. And she pours this heart and this intensity into the scene that is something fascinating to watch. It just, I think, goes to show how Lee is one of the best actresses, in K-drama land. Truly magical scene. I think we also need to mention Nakamura Anna, who played Kanna, and Hong Jong-hyun, who played Minjun. They also deliver very strong performances. They are just annoying enough for second leads, but I like that their characters, they have personality. They prompt the growth of our protagonists without really overshadowing them. So you have several supporting characters that give different perspectives and personalities to the show and balance out the seriousness of the main storyline. So you have Hong's family, her best friend, Jungo's dad, who is played marvelously by the incredible Lily Frankie. You also have my favorites, the boys who work at a ramen restaurant in Japan. They are the most adorable group of characters ever. So it was nice to have them around for sure. So you have this lovely group of supporting characters in What Comes After Love that never take too much screen time. Because like I said, we are focusing on this main story. We are focusing on Jungo and Hong. But it's still good to have some nice characters to rely to give this different flavor, let's say, to the show. So What Comes After Love is a visually stunning and profoundly moving, authentic portrayal of the complexity of love. Solid script, solid performances, solid directing, solid cinematography. And of course, this Korea-Japan combination that gives the show extra charm, and it proves the amazing stories that these two countries can tell together. So What Comes After Love is highly recommended. I loved the show, and I think it's an incredibly well-made piece of television. So I will be going back to it in the future for sure. So What Comes After Love is on Viki, and you can listen to the soundtrack on Spotify actually, including the theme song, the beautiful Closer Than the Stars by From. Beautiful theme song. You can find it on Spotify. So this review was posted yesterday on the Blossom Review in more detail if you want to take a look. And tomorrow we have, I decided to do something a little bit different this week. And tomorrow we have an article on 25 J-pop and K-pop music videos that could be award-winning short films. So music videos that tell stories. Okay, so I really hope you check it out as well. It's something different. I hope you enjoy it. And well, I hope you enjoy your Halloween today. I hope you like the video, and I hope you subscribe. Stop by the Blossom Reviews, sign up for our newsletter as well, and make sure to take care of yourself. I hope you have a fantastic day today and a fantastic weekend, and happy Halloween! Bye! Thank you for stopping by. Bye!